Good evening, I'm Marty Olsen, and welcome to another edition of City Focus. And tonight I'm delighted to have a young woman as my guest that I've known basically her entire life, Kristine Johnson, who is representing the Alzheimer Association of Connecticut, and she's the Eastern Regional Director. And Kristine, I want to thank you and for coming on board tonight, and I think you've got a very important topic that we ought to be conversing about.
Thank you, Marty. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I think we'll have a great conversation as per usual with City Focus. This week we will be we're live and we'll be taking phone calls. So if you'd like to contribute or offer some commentary, thoughts, or ask questions, please feel free to call in. Locally, we can be reached at 860-440-3154, or if you're outside the local calling area, we can be reached at 1-800-253-2285. Before we get too far into the program, I'd just like to make a note that working in the control room tonight, and she may be doing some camera duty as well, is Dakia James, who represents the Drop-In Learning Center, and she'll be an 8th grade student at the Benny Dover Jackson Middle School this fall. And she has been working with us now for well over a month and doing a great job, and I appreciate her taking time out once a week to come out and contribute as she does. And one of her running partners, Azelle Morales, is actually down in Florida, in Orlando, with the NAACP National Convention. So he won't be with us this week, and we expect him back in a couple of weeks. I would like to point out next week there's the local New London Republican and Democratic town committee meetings and caucuses where candidates will be getting nominated for City Council and Board of Education. So next week's program will be a rebroadcast of the program from last week, where we had the MetroCast leadership in discussing the transition to digital from the analog systems. So that's the setup for the next couple of weeks. And Kristine, I have known you, as I mentioned at the top, since you were an infant. Yes. And your father and I went back to literally grammar school, and we participated in many different youth activities at the old YMCA on Meridian Street. So we go back to when we were in short pants, you might say. And we played high school football together at Northern High School, and I met your mom, who's also in the control room watching us here tonight, so we better be good.
That's right.
And I have really enjoyed, your folks, and they've been very, very good friends and good to me over the course of many, many years. But what's transpired with your dad, where he contracted the early onset Alzheimer's in his early 50s.
Yes.
Was very, very challenging. I mean, you lived it, and
yes.
And you and your mom, and you were the primary caregivers, and you both exhibited extraordinary strength.
Thank you.
In taking care of your dad. But perhaps you can share with the audience warning signs. I mean, sure. What triggered where you guys said, gee, something's not quite right? And although we tend to associate Alzheimer's with more elderly people, early onset is not unprecedented. In a more high-profile case is Pat Summitt, the former women's basketball coach at Tennessee. So why don't you discuss some of these things?
Sure. I've been with the Alzheimer's Association for approximately a year and a half, and when we were going through this journey with my dad, we knew absolutely nothing about the disease. And as you said, we associated it with a disease for the elderly. When we first started seeing signs in my father, it wasn't the typical memory issues. There were some memory problems that he was having, but that wasn't the first sign that we were seeing. My father, as you said, he was young. When he was diagnosed, he was 52 years old. We were seeing signs of something years before that. We went to the doctor, we were asking questions. My father was a lineman for Northeast Utilities, and one of the concerns that we had is maybe he had been zapped by electricity one too many times, or Worst case scenario, maybe it was a brain tumor. Never in our wildest imagination did we think it was Alzheimer's disease. So when we got that diagnosis, it was a long time coming. And one of the issues is because he was younger, even doctors today, they still, for the most part, think of it as someone that's older. So throughout the nation, there are approximately 200,000 people with younger onset Alzheimer's.
And what qualifies as early onset?
Sure.
I mean, 50s, 30s,
Younger onset
60s?
younger onset is anyone 65 years or younger who is diagnosed. They are considered younger onset. So again, my dad was 52 when he was actually diagnosed. There have been people as early in their 30s. So those cases aren't as common. They're more rare, but it does happen. You know, throughout the state and throughout the nation, there are people in their 40s, their 30s that have been diagnosed with this awful disease. One of the things that we were told by a specialist in Boston was, for some reason, and they're not exactly sure why, the younger the onset of Alzheimer's, the more progressive it is, the harder it is, and a person will go through the stages of the disease faster than someone that might be a little older. So on average, a person with younger onset Alzheimer's, and again, that's 65 years or younger, they might have an average lifespan of 5 years, 8 years, whereas someone that's older, possibly in their 70s or 80s, it could be an average of 10 years, even up to 20 years.
So from the time that your father was, Nathan, was diagnosed at 52, things came to a conclusion when he was about 57, so it was like about 5 years.
Yes,
correct?
it was 5 years from the time of diagnosis, yes.
Which, I mean, to a degree, I mean, it put him in a better place because it wasn't going to get better.
Right.
I mean,
right.
it's challenging. I mean, it tears at you.
It is, and that's one of the things that we didn't understand about Alzheimer's disease. Which now, since I work for the association, we want to educate the community, because people often just say, if it's just memory loss, why does someone die from the disease? And what I know now, what we didn't know when we were a family going through it initially, is it's not just memory loss. The average healthy person's brain, an average person's brain, is approximately 3 pounds. By the time the progression of the disease continues to the time that they pass away, it shrinks to about 1.5 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot of mass that's lost. The plaques and tangles are literally eating away at the brain. There's holes in the brain, gaps. And, you know, our brain affects everything, not just our thinking, not just our memory, but our ability to speak, to process information, the ability for our brain to tell our body to process oxygen and blood flow. Everything is affected.
To move and to walk and to
Everything, exactly.
to eat, just motor skills.
Definitely.
So it's encompassing.
Yes, it is. And because Alzheimer's is a progressive disease, it doesn't just stay the same, it gets worse over time. So there are different stages of the disease. Some publications state 3 stages, early, middle, and late. Some publications break it down into 7 stages, which is they're just categories of that early, middle, late stage of the disease. So as a person's going throughout the disease, there's different challenges for each stage. Someone that's in the earlier stage of the disease might still drive, they might still work, they're able to communicate and, you know, get along in life. As the disease progresses, that's when additional challenges start to happen. Memory loss starts to come into play. So with the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's, again, a lot of people just automatically assume memory loss. With my father, one of the first things that I noticed was his depth perception. He was driving towards the breakdown lane. And we would say, oh, Dad, you know, you drive a little closer to the breakdown lane. And he'd correct himself, and little by little, he'd start going to the side again. So it was that depth perception. Another thing that I noticed with him is when he would go to get in the car, he would hit his head on the side of the car door. After that happened a couple of times, we knew something is wrong. It's not just that he's overtired. Something else is going on here. So that's when we started seeking professional help and to see what was going on with him.
Did he also exhibit issues at work that raised red flags with Northeast Utilities, where they were concerned for his safety as well?
Northeast Utilities, they were wonderful. some of the issues that we found out about were a little later on, but something that's very common for people with Alzheimer's is they get lost. They don't have the ability to, if they get sidetracked while they're driving or while they're walking, to get back on track. So he was getting lost while he was driving. He was having some other issues, so it did become a safety hazard.
Well, I know that early on, after Nathan was diagnosed, and from time to time, I would, as most people who know me know, I go to a lot of ball games.
Yes.
And occasionally Nate would keep me company. And for those who know him and knew him, I would say he was what you might call a practical joker.
Yes, he was.
And with the disease that, especially as it was progressing, you're wondering, is this Nate being a practical joker, or is there a little slippage here, and trying to balance and also give him all due respect, as an adult, and not be treating him as a child. And over the course of time, obviously, things got to a point where you had to literally take him by the hand.
Yes.
Which is what you do, what you got to do. But it was fascinating in terms of learning and observing, and again, I think that what you're doing, diving in and trying to utilize your experiences working with the Alzheimer Association and teaching people, I think speaks volumes, because you've taken something that's so important to you and trying to help others. So you should be, commended for that. And I've interrupted you on your 10 warning signs.
That's quite all right.
So why don't we go, give us an overview of the 10 warning signs, so that I think it's important for our audience that perhaps you may be seeing something, or quite frankly, if you're dealing with any of this or have dealt with any of this, perhaps you could share some of your experiences by giving us a call, and the numbers are on the screen. So you're on.
Yeah, so with the 10 main warning signs for Alzheimer's disease, we do caution people, if something looks familiar, don't automatically assume that it's Alzheimer's or dementia. And I'm going to talk about what Alzheimer's means and what dementia means. But with the 10 main warning signs for Alzheimer's disease, the first one is memory changes that interfere with daily life. So that could be forgetting something that's recently learned. It could be that you read the newspaper and forgot what you read, or that you forgot that you read it at all. So that's something that interferes with daily life. The second warning sign, challenges in planning or solving problems. And this can be different for different people. I had one lady that told me, with her husband, the first thing that she really caught on to, that she knew something was going on, was that he was having trouble balancing the checkbook. He was an accountant, and she explained that he could just say numbers off the top of his head. She started noticing that bills were coming back unpaid. When she was looking in the checkbook, there were all sorts of mistakes. And that was something that was out of the ordinary for her husband, because he was great with numbers. So that warning sign for her might not be the same for everyone, because there are people that don't balance their checkbook. So that's not going to be the same warning sign. With my father, one of the things that we saw with planning issues is, as you know, he loved gardening. He loved our yard. He took care of several people's yards. And out of the picture of a magazine, I mean, really beautiful work that he did. We started noticing that flowers would be here, ready to plant. The lawnmower would be here. Tools would be around. But he would just kind of walk around. He would just kind of pick at things, but never was able to execute the plan of actually planting the flowers. That was a warning sign for us, because that was out of the ordinary. So that's, again, those warning signs can be different for different people. The third warning sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks. So it could be someone that's still working, that's having a hard time focusing, might not be able to do a spreadsheet like they used to do. So that especially comes into play when that person is working, or even someone that's still driving. Oftentimes people get turned around when they're driving and aren't able to get back to their normal route. So anything that can encompass quite a number of different things. The fourth warning sign is confusion with time or place. So someone might forget where they are or how they got there. Someone a little further in the disease, like today, for example, 95 degrees outside. Inside, if you have your air conditioner blasting, someone might be chilly. A person that is in the grips of Alzheimer's or related dementia, they might feel that it's really chilly inside, cover up with a scarf, a blanket, or a sweater, go outside, and their body does not tell them that, okay, it's 95 degrees, it's time to take off some of these layers. So they have that confusion with time or place. So their body is slowing down. So that's something that could definitely happen. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial cues, and this is the depth perception that I was talking about with my father. So driving towards the breakdown lane. Sometimes you might see someone, when they're going to take a step, they're looking down and they might take their foot and kind of test the waters out, so to speak. So that's their depth perception is being affected. The sixth warning sign is new problems with words in speaking or writing. So they might lose track of a word here or there. They might need some cues, like a sticky note. And I always joke, I'm the queen of sticky notes. I have sticky notes all over my desk, but then I forget what sticky note is for what. So sometimes we need some cues. We need some reminders, and that's okay. But for a person that has Alzheimer's or related dementia, they might need that cue to tell them, turn the light switch off. Make sure you turn the oven off. They might have an issue with, they'll know what a watch is for, and that a watch tells time, but they might not have that word watch. They might say, you know, that clock thing on your wrist. So they might know about what it is, but they don't have that specific word for watch. The seventh warning sign, which is probably one of the most common, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps. That was a common question that we got. Oh, since you're going through this with my dad, can you answer this question? I forgot where I put my keys. Does that mean I have Alzheimer's disease? All of a sudden, my mom and I became experts, and we weren't by any means. So people were telling us, I forgot where I put my sunglasses. Does that mean I have Alzheimer's disease? The key factor is a person with dementia, Alzheimer's or related dementia, cannot retrace their steps. So I always explain, if you're going into the house, the phone is ringing and you have an armful of groceries, you put those groceries down, you answer the phone, and then you're trying to think, where did I put my keys? We can say, okay, the phone rang, I went into the kitchen, I went into the living room. A person with Alzheimer's cannot go back and remember where they were. The eighth warning sign for Alzheimer's is decreased or poor judgment, and that can be giving large sums of money away, using one of the things that my dad did before his diagnosis, I believe. With the lawnmower, we had the grill was heating up outside, and he took the lawnmower and he dumped it over, and there was liquor coming out. And I said, you know, Dad, what are you doing? Oh, I'm trying to see if there's oil or gas coming out. But it wasn't registering that he was right next to an open flame. So that's decrease in poor judgment that can happen. The ninth warning sign, withdrawal from work or social situations. Oftentimes we'll hear that a loved one is backing up a little bit. They're not going to church as much. They're not going to family functions as much. I had someone tell me that she was very concerned about her friend because she called her the bingo queen. And when they went to the senior center, she always played bingo. Little by little, she noticed that she wasn't engaged in bingo as much, and she knew something was out of the ordinary. So that definitely could be a warning sign for people. And the 10th warning sign is changes in mood and personality. Oftentimes, people that have Alzheimer's or related dementia, they might lose something. They don't say it in front of them, that means that you stole it. So they'll accuse people automatically of stealing something. They might think that their spouse is having an affair. Something that they can't explain is that you stole it or someone's cheating them out of something. So those are the 10 main warning signs. There are definitely others.
So it could be any or all or any combination thereof.
Definitely.
Now, as you and your mom were going through the early stages, you didn't have this list to refer to.
We didn't.
You were kind of flying by the seat of your pants.
We didn't.
And as I recall, you were having a difficult time securing information and services because your dad was young.
Yes.
It wasn't like he was 80 and it was expected.
Right. And that's something that we talk with families about now at this time, especially for younger onset, because he wasn't a senior, he didn't qualify for a lot of services. So that's something that people with younger onset can face that challenge. One of the things that was very frustrating was that the doctors that we were utilizing in the area. No one told us there was an Alzheimer's Association. We never got a card, here, contact the Alzheimer's Association. So one day I was looking online and doing research, and come to find out the Alzheimer's Association was right in our backyard, right in Norwich. So I contacted them, and that relationship was truly a lifesaver. The information, the education that we got from there, we went to caregiver courses, suggestions, understanding about behaviors that happened or were coming along. The Alzheimer's Association was truly a life connection for us, especially with our desire to keep my dad home. So now that I have an opportunity to work there, I like to use the situations that we had, the experience that we had, because what we were going through was truly trial by fire. You know, we were going by the seat of our pants. So now I have a little more knowledge, and I'm able to share that with families.
That's good. We got a call. Why don't we go to the phone?
Sure.
Good evening, and you're on the air.
First of all, I'd like to say, what a great show. And thank you so much for sharing your personal life to educate the audience. Do you have a contact number? You said that you do outreach and you share this information, but I don't see a contact number for you or the name of your organization listed. Would that be something that can be put on the screen so people can contact you and invite you into their organization or to their social groups to speak to the masses?
You got the number on the screen, I think.
So the number is on the screen now, yes, and we do programs in the community. My office directly in Norwich is 860-887-3593. Our 800 number is on the screen, and that's 1-800-272-3900, and that's a national phone number. So if you're calling from Connecticut, it'll connect you with the Connecticut chapter. With that 800 number, that is our helpline number. So someone is able to answer your call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you have a crisis in the middle of the night, or if you just need information about something, you can call that number and someone will be able to direct you.
Okay, and you also have a website that's posted. What type of information would be available there?
On that website, our national website, and then our Connecticut chapter is associated with that, we have information about services and programs in the community, resources that are in the community. So if you need a doctor or you need a new doctor, diagnostic centers, programs that are available, support groups, professional information and information for family caregiving. If you need information about an in-home program, an in-home service, that information is on the website. If you're having questions about behaviors or communications or even stages of the disease, that's on the website. There's lots of information on the website, research, all kinds of information that you can utilize.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening, and thank you for calling. I wanted to inquire, because you've mentioned dementia as well as Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And I think for the uninformed, and I will put myself into that category, they're terms that tend to be interchanged.
Yes.
And they have very clear and distinct meanings, and they're very different. Perhaps you can share those differences.
Sure. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. The word dementia, all dementia means is cognitive impairment that interferes with daily life. So that's really what dementia means. Now there's different types of dementia. So we give the example, we use the word dementia as an umbrella term, like you use the word cancer. Unfortunately, there's many types of cancer: brain cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer. Such as dementia. There's Alzheimer's disease under the dementia umbrella, which is the most common form of dementia. There's dementia from Lewy body disease, Pick's disease. There's a dementia component that some people develop from Parkinson's disease. So there are dementias that are fatal, frontal temporal dementia. Dementias that are fatal, such as Alzheimer's disease and the ones that I named. And then there are dementias that are treated, are able to be treated and cured. Alzheimer's disease, even though there are some drugs for Alzheimer's and some of the other dementias, there are no drugs to stop the progression, to cure the disease. So it is a fatal disease. Some dementias, again, can be treated. A person can have dementia symptoms from their thyroid being out of whack. and that can cause symptoms that are similar to dementia. Someone else can have dementia symptoms because their vitamin B12 is so depleted. So once they get out of a vitamin, I mean, those numbers have to really be depleted to have dementia symptoms, but it is something that's happened. Once they get on a vitamin B12 regimen, those symptoms of dementia can clear up. Some people might have dementia symptoms from medications that are interacting improperly. And once that's figured out, the symptoms of dementia can be cleared up. So again, those dementias can be treated, reversed, cured, whereas unfortunately Alzheimer's and some of the other dementias are not curable at this time.
Okay. Now, one thing I want to inquire is that, getting back to the 10 warning signs,
Yes.
if there's somebody in the household who's exhibiting some of these warning signs, I mean, is there a concern that the person who is exhibiting these warning signs may become defensive and say, well,
Sure.
that's not me. You're making a mistake.
Sure.
I had a bad day.
Sure.
And how is that dealt with, where you can get an individual to get some medical, see a doctor or whatever would be the appropriate level of observation?
Right. Sometimes it can be a tricky one, because especially in the earlier stage of the disease, people can cover. Sometimes we call that social graces. So as they might be showing signs of a type of dementia, they might say, oh, I'm just tired today, or I just had a bad day, and they can kind of cover their tracks for a little bit. So sometimes it can be difficult, but as these symptoms really become more pronounced, it's important to try and get that medical help. Sometimes it really takes finding that one person. So if you have the loved one that's not listening to you, maybe there's a grandchild, maybe there's a brother, a sister, a sibling. It could be different for different people, but sometimes there's that one person that they might listen to more so than you, and that's something that was similar with my dad. My mom tells people all the time that when things needed to be done, or we needed my dad to kind of go with the flow or do what needed to be done, he might listen to me some days a little more than he would listen to my mom. So sometimes you just have to kind of find what person that is. It might not be a family member. It might be a pastor or a priest or a rabbi. It might be a member, of the clergy. It might be a family friend. So one of the things with Alzheimer's or any dementia is we have to kind of put this stereotype away. This doesn't need to be a disease that continues to be a shush disease. I still hear people say, oh, they're talking at a regular tone, and then all of a sudden when they say the word Alzheimer's, their voice drops because they don't want the person next to them to know that someone in their family has Alzheimer's. And we need to stop that. We don't blame anyone for having this disease. It's not their fault. It's nothing to be embarrassed of or ashamed of. The more knowledge that we get, the more understanding, that is what's going to be helpful. Let your neighbors know, especially if there is a diagnosis. Let people in your church know. Let your community know. This is a disease that it encompasses everyone's support. The more support you have, the better off you're going to be. So there's that old saying that it takes a village to raise a child. And I said, as we were going through this journey, it takes a village to care for someone with Alzheimer's disease. When my father loved to walk, and he would walk and we wouldn't see him for quite some time. One of the things that was a wonderful support is our neighbor's son. He saw my dad downtown. We live by Ocean Beach. He saw my father downtown, who called his mother, who called my mother. Had Andrew not called his mother, we wouldn't have known where my dad was. So that takes letting people know what's going on. Let people support you. I'm not saying this because you're hosting this show, but the support that you gave us, Marty, was something that was valued and appreciated. Caregivers are under such stress. One of the things that we hear about caregivers from doctors and from people that we work with is caregivers often end up in the hospital or even dying before the loved one that you're caring for because of the level of stress. They're having heart attacks. They're having strokes. Caregiving is such an encompassing job, especially when you have someone that's working full time. You need all the support that you can get. So don't be afraid to let people know Yes, I can use your help. Yes, if you can take them to the ball game for an hour just so I can take a breath or go to the grocery store. I mean, those things that might seem so simple to one person is really all the world to a caregiver, because it allows them that little bit of break that they need to continue on with this job. It's a hard job.
Well, it is, and the fact that you're stepping up and trying to share your knowledge and your experiences and expanding them now that you're in this full-time now with it's a job.
Yes.
And just for background, I mean, Kristine has got a background in social work. I mean, you got a degree
in psychology
from Quinnipiac.
Yes.
Well, they had a great hockey team this year. Saw them play a few times, and they lost to Yale in the national championship. Little sidebar. But before you came on the air this evening, you mentioned before we came on the air that you were at a car show, and
Yes.
again, distributing information, trying to answer questions. Maybe you might
Yes.
want to share what you were doing out in the heat
It definitely was hot.
before you came out to the bright lights here.
It's been a busy day. It started off from Rocky Hill, and then it went to Mystic. Mystic Health and Rehab, they had a classic car show this evening, and one of the things that they did to support us at the Alzheimer's Association, all the proceeds that they made from the barbecue that they had and the raffle baskets, they're donating to the Alzheimer's Association. So we appreciate that opportunity to go in and have a table. So they invited me to come and have an information table. So I had the information about the 10 warning signs and the basics and programs that we offer in the community. And we also promoted our walk. Our walk to end Alzheimer's is September 21st at Ocean Beach. This is our first year at Ocean Beach, and we're really excited about that. We've previously been at Harkness Park, and last year our numbers were blown out of the water with supporters, which is a great thing to have. But because there were so many people, the parking became a challenge at Harkness. So Ocean Beach has a lot of parking, beautiful location, and we're excited to take our walk
Now, will
to Ocean Beach.
will walk be at the beach or be around town, ending and starting at the beach?
We are having a couple of options to meet everyone's needs. So people that need to stay on a flat surface, they'll be able to utilize the boardwalk. Other walkers will be able to start at the beach. We're going to go on Pequot and come down and back at the beach, and we're going to have activities. We had face painting, balloon. We had April Brunel, who's a balloon lady, and we'll have other activities for families to come and enjoy. Ocean Beach has been wonderful to work with as we're planning the event, and it's a wonderful day. It's the day this is our biggest fundraiser of the year, and the money goes to help support families, programs, services in Connecticut, and also goes to research. But even if people aren't coming out for the donation aspect, it's a time for community and collaboration. One of the things that we do at the walk, before I started at the Alzheimer's Association, my mother and I were invited to be part of the Promise Garden ceremony. So there are 4 different flowers, 4 different color flowers. There's a color if you have the disease, a color if you're a caregiver, a color if you have lost someone to the disease, and a color if you don't have a personal connection but you're supporting the disease. So after my dad passed away, my mom and I were invited to come and be part of that ceremony, and we were standing to represent people who had lost someone to the disease. So it's a time for families to come together, to support one another, to see the sea of people that have been affected by this disease, and to know that you're not alone. Caregiving and being a person diagnosed with this disease can be a lonely journey if you allow it to be. So to know that there are people that are in a similar situation as you, know that there are supports that are out there, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. So it's a great day, a family event, and we encourage people to come to Ocean Beach September 21st.
September 21st, right? I better mark that down on my calendar. Now, for folks that would want to contribute to that, do they just make direct donations, or do they sponsor you as a walker, for instance, so much per mile, or how does that facet work?
There's no minimum requirement. People can sign up and come as an individual walker. They can join a walk team, whether they know the team or not. They can start their own team, or if they just want to make a donation to the general New London Walk, then they can do that as well. So we have captain's kits that give people ideas for recruiting members, sending emails out to family, friends, co-workers to let them know that you're walking to end Alzheimer's. And there are some other great tools in the kit to give people suggestions.
Is the model similar to what the Cancer Society does? I mean, there are other organizations, Heart Association,
Right.
that do walks. I mean, that are,
Some of the other associations have a minimum financial requirement to participate, and we don't have a minimum.
okay.
So we appreciate everyone's support, and we're there to raise funds.
Sure. And the funds raised are for what purpose? Is it for research? Is it for the outreach that education?
The funds that are raised are everything that you mentioned. Some of the money goes to research. Some of the money stays specifically in Connecticut. So we do programs in the community. All the programs that we do for families, for caregivers, for interested people in the community are free of charge. So when we have caregiver courses, when we have programs that are the 10 warning signs, the basics, how to handle different communication skills and behaviors. All of those are free to the general public. So in order to be able to provide that service, we need funds that are coming in. We also have a program called the Respite Program, and that's a program for caregivers to be able to have a little bit of break. It's to support the caregivers. So they are awarded a small amount of money to be able to use funds to send their loved one to either an adult day program, for home care coming in, or for a short-term stay in a skilled nursing facility. So if everyone in the family wants to go to their cousin's wedding out of state and their loved one with the disease can't make the trip, that money can be used for a short-term stay in a skilled nursing facility or a 24-hour care in the home. So that money can be used 1 day a week, it can be used 5 days a week, but it is a specific amount of money that.
I mean, there are aspects of life. I mean, you've used kind of big event, wedding, let's say, out of state.
Sure.
But I mean, you've got day-to-day stuff. I mean, you got to go shopping.
Some people still work. Yeah, caregivers work full time.
There are other aspects of one's life. You need just to take a break.
You need to take a break.
Deep breath.
And sometimes I tell people, even sometimes they do think it has to be a big, like a doctor's appointment or a big appointment that they have to utilize these funds. Being a caregiver and being on that side, I tell people, if you need to go to the end of your street, stare at the water, stare at the grass for an hour, and just have that time to clear your mind, you can use the funds for that. Because caregiving, again, is so stressful, and because oftentimes caregivers will have succumb to medical issues before their loved one with Alzheimer's. So if the plan for caregivers is to keep their loved one in the home and keep them safe, this is a way they can do it with a little bit of support. So we do encourage that. Another program, if I can mention, Marty,
Sure.
called the Safe Return Medical Alert Program. And this isn't a prevention program for wandering, but if you do have a loved one or a family member that does wander, we do know that statistics tell us 6 out of 10 people that have Alzheimer's or related dementia do wander. This is a program that can help bring them back, help to connect them. So there's either a bracelet or a necklace medallion. There's no personal information on the jewelry. There's a universal medical symbol. It's purple, so a first responder will automatically know that this person has some sort of cognitive impairment. So if someone looks like they need some assistance, the first responder sees the medical alert jewelry, they'll call the phone number, give the operator the ID number, and then all the information will come up about this individual, a picture of them, who the person is to contact, where they belong, if they have any other medical needs. So with this program, again, it's not a prevention for wandering, but it can help connect a person after they have wandered. And we have scholarships for this program as well. So if a family cannot afford it, we will pay for it for you through our scholarship program. We believe in this program. It's helped to reconnect families, and we want people to utilize it. It's about $55 a year, but again, if you cannot afford that, then we'll pay for that additional fee. And we also encourage caregivers to get the jewelry, because there have been situations where caregivers have gone out to run an errand and either had a medical emergency or car accident and no one knew that they were caring for a loved one that had Alzheimer's that was home. So the caregiver jewelry says caregiver on it. So first responder will know to either look in the immediate area to see if there's someone wandering or to go back and check the house.
Yeah, I just want to share a little anecdotal story here. One evening, I took Nathan to a Newland High School football game on a Friday night, and I get down to pay and give the ticket, and I'm talking to somebody, and I turn around, and your father had he disappeared.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit nervous. And amazing with cell phones. You know, I don't know what I've done before cell phones, but I called up your mother in a panic. Brenda, I've lost Nate. And went up to where I normally would watch the game from the press box, and I had the announcer page, your father, and I don't know if he ever heard it or not, but I forget precisely when, but he just kind of meandered in, and he showed up. But also, one of the things that I found, and I don't know if you and your mom did, is that when I had Nate out, especially when he was not at his best,
Yes.
How thoughtful people were, that they could see that he was not right.
Yes.
So I mean, they'd help if he
Yes.
they were aware, and they were accommodating.
Right.
And I just thought that spoke well to the human spirit.
Yes, it does. It does, and that's so appreciative. We appreciate people that are understanding, and again, especially as a person's progressing the disease, at some point you might be able to tell that they need some assistance. So when people step up or step in to offer that assistance, it's the best thing to do. And that allows families to know that they can go out in public. They can go out and know that there are some supports out there for them. One of the things that we hear from people is, especially caregivers, they still need to go out and they want to bring their loved one with them. And oftentimes around here, when there's nothing else to do, people might go to the casino. The casino can be a very overstimulating place, just like even a store could be. But when you have a person that has a dementia, just know that your surroundings can be overwhelming for them. So lights, noises, conversations, crowds, all these things can affect a person with dementia. So you might have a loved one, and even if they're still doing okay in the disease, but they definitely have some challenges, they might go into the bathroom one direction, and you might not realize they went out the other door because they couldn't find their way back. So that's something that has happened, and we appreciate when people step up and help.
You do what you have to do.
You do what you have to do.
One thing I wanted to just share, we've got about 10, 15 minutes left in the program, folks. And if you'd like to offer your thoughts or contribute, the numbers are on the screen, and we'd really appreciate your input. Locally, we can be reached at 860-440-3154, or if you're out of the local area, at 800-253-2285. And again, you're watching City Focus, and I'm Marty Olsen, your host. And tonight I'm joined by Kristine Johnson, who's the Eastern Regional Director for the Connecticut chapters of the Alzheimer's Association. And that has to do with many of the challenges. I mean, some of the notes that you prepared for me for tonight, legal and financial planning. I mean,
Yes.
for instance, if the person who is sick has been, let's say, the person who's handled the finances, and all of a sudden it's like,
Right.
what do I do?
Right.
How do I live? How do I pay the bills?
Right.
Who do I see? Who's not going to take advantage of me?
Right.
You mentioned burnout and just a variety of different things.
Sure.
That, maybe legal issues that as you're getting near the end, has a will been prepared?
Right.
Is a will important?
Right.
Perhaps you can
Sure.
talk on some of these topics.
Sure. One of the things that we offer, and again, the service is free of charge, is a caregiver course. It's a 4-week program, and each week there's a different topic. The first week, it talks about the basics of the disease and the progression of the disease. Then we bring in community supports, different levels of care. We bring in someone that talks about caregiver stress and how to keep yourself healthy and supported. And then the last week is legal and financial planning. So we invite attorneys from the area to come in and speak to the families, to the caregivers, to the interested parties about the importance of this legal and financial planning, not waiting until the last minute. As you said, does a person have a will? The importance of planning while the person that has the dementia is able to have input, able to plan is so important. Oftentimes people will wait until there's an emergency. The time to look at facilities, skilled nursing care, assisted livings, is not when an emergency happens and you have to find an option the next day, but it's earlier on. So even if a person's plan is that they don't want to place their loved one, we always encourage, go and see what's in the community, see what supports are out there. So what the attorneys talk about is, how are you going to pay for that care? The question of Title 19 always comes up, and that's such a complicated topic. The attorneys that we utilize, Wade Jensen is an attorney out of Groton that has spoken at a number of our caregiver courses at Waterford. So we always encourage people, you must utilize an elder law attorney, and I can't say that enough. There are attorneys that mean well, but unfortunately that elder law changes so much, so often year to year, that you need a person that specializes in that to get to give the correct information. You don't want to do something out of advice that turns out to be something that's going to be held against you. So with the 5-year look back on the Title 19 and all these different aspects as you're planning, it's important to utilize an elder law attorney.
We've got a call. Good evening, and you're on the air. Thank you for waiting.
Good evening. What a wonderful show you have, Marty, tonight.
Thank you.
Your guest is to be admired and appreciated. I'm really finding it fascinating listening to her and the advice and the suggestions and sharing, about her own personal situation. But I will tell you that as a volunteer in nursing homes, my husband and I have been doing it for many years with our therapy dogs. And let me tell you, we have some wonderful stories what a dog can do with an Alzheimer's or dementia resident, and how they can trigger the most wonderful comments and conversations, and it's a miraculous thing when you watch somebody that has Alzheimer's or dementia that doesn't know where they are and the date and the time and the place or anything, and all of a sudden the dog enters their room and they're a different person. They could have a conversation at that moment, just like you and I are having, me calling in your show. So I'm really enjoying listening to her because of all the work that we do with the Alzheimer's and dementia people. They're a wonderful group of people to really be with, and I just encourage anyone who has a family member, a loved one, friend that does have Alzheimer's or dementia that has to go into any kind of a nursing home, skilled facility, whatever, to really look for programs that have the therapy dogs, because they really do wonderful things for the people, and I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you so much for the call and your kind words.
All right, and thank you. It's a wonderful show.
Thank you much. Have a nice evening.
You too. Good night.
Good night.
And thank you for the work that you do with our family members. We appreciate those. We look to those professionals as family members, as family caregivers, to help guide us and direct us as they're caring for our loved ones. So thank you for all those that are working with this population, because you have to have that appreciation, that understanding to really be effective with this population. And as the caller said, with pet therapy, there are so many things that are out there that can help really facilitate and bring out that communication. Because that communication can become more challenging as a person progresses, we have to find ways to enter their world. We don't want to bring them and relate them into our reality. We want to join their reality. So using therapy as in pets, music therapy can be very helpful. Picture therapy, that can really help stimulate memories.
Now, the utilization of dogs, is that something that is done out of your offices, or is that something that's outside of something you'd refer to?
We would refer, yes, we don't have that program in our office, but we do know programs in the area that utilize dogs or other animals, and sometimes that gentle comfort of having that pet, it might bring that person back to a pet they had when they were younger.
Do you work with High Hopes out in Old Lyme, the therapeutic riding?
Not in this job. When I used to work with children in a different level of care, but not with dementia patients. I haven't, but that would be something, especially if they had any interest in horses, that could be very.
They seem to have tremendous levels of success with out at High Hopes.
Yeah, they have wonderful
Kitty Stalsberg,
programs.
the director out there, does great work. Folks, we're getting down near the end of the program, but we do have time to squeeze in a couple of calls. So if you'd like to get involved with the program directly, please call locally at 860-440-3154. Again, it's Marty Olsen, City Focus, and Kristine Johnson is my guest tonight, and we're discussing Alzheimer's and her work with the Connecticut chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. What community resources are at our disposal to deal with the issues at hand?
Like the elder law attorneys, that's always a great place to start because planning does take a lot of time. So utilizing that financial planning, the legal planning is very important. So that's a great community resource. There are people that can help with evaluations for your loved one to see if it is a dementia. And again, because it's so important to find out what type of dementia it is, sometimes we'll have someone let us know or tell us that so-and-so diagnosed my loved one with dementia. And we'll say, what type of dementia? I don't know, they just had dementia. It's important to know what you're dealing with because, again, it could be a dementia that's treatable, curable, reversible, but unless you know that, you might assume it's Alzheimer's or a fatal dementia. A medication that might work for one type of progressive dementia might not work well for another type of dementia. There are some differences. So frontotemporal dementia can have some differences in Alzheimer's disease. So it's important to know what type of dementia you have or your loved one has. So we have resources in the community to help diagnose appropriately that can give you the idea of what type of dementia it is.
Does your office or offices in Norwich or throughout Connecticut, do you refer directly to a medical teams or units, or is that...
We give people the choice. We have listings throughout the state. We have 5 regional offices throughout Connecticut. So
you have 5 regional offices?
Yes, we have 5 regional offices.
And they are where?
I'm in Norwich. We have Rocky Hill, Hamden, Norwalk, and New Milford, which is past Lake Danbury area.
Yep.
So we have information throughout the state for all different levels of care, resources that are out there. So again, whatever the family needs. So if they want to keep their loved one home and they need some in-home help, then we have a listing statewide of in-home services. If they're looking for an assisted living facility or a skilled nursing facility, we have a statewide list. We don't tell them, okay, this is the one to go to, but here are some choices in the area. And we'll answer questions, and we let people know these are questions to ask. When you go to visit a facility or you're interviewing an in-home program, an in-home service, ask these questions. What type of dementia training do they have? How does this person interact with other people that have dementia? How are the facilities set up? Look at the lighting. You know, what kind of programs do they offer? So just because a facility might be top of the line doesn't necessarily mean that their staff is connected and focused. So you have to really balance everything. You have to look at the whole picture. So because it's going to be such an overwhelming process, we can help people with listings in their area and try to help narrow down some choices.
Well, I think that's important. I mean, and you've alluded to this, but getting the proper diagnosis goes a long way to correcting things or turning the tide or slowing it down, whatever the case may be. And if you're not getting the correct diagnosis, I mean, it can create all sorts of havoc, I would think. I mean,
to give you an example, one of the doctors that we work with, he was referred a patient that had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's for over a year before this person was referred to him. He went through the full medical workup anyway for a diagnosis just to confirm, and come to find out her vitamin B12 level was so depleted that was causing her symptoms of dementia. She did not have Alzheimer's disease. She had something that was treatable, reversible, and curable. So that's why we encourage people. That's why it's so important.
And B12 is you can buy over the counter.
And when your levels are that depleted, you need
maybe a little bit more, but
but it's something that can be treated Whereas unfortunately Alzheimer's, there's nothing to slow the progression of the disease down, nothing to stop the disease at this time. But with the research, our governor signed an action plan. He's appointed a task force in Connecticut, which we're thrilled about. So the attention that we're getting for Alzheimer's and research is going to help to really fund additional research, to find some tools that are going to slow the progression down and eventually stop this disease. Our president signed the National Alzheimer's Action Plan, which was huge. He signed that last year, with the focus being on Alzheimer's disease because the numbers that are just going to continue to escalate. Right now, Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in people. The 6th leading cause of death. That's huge. And it is one of the least funded diseases for research. So that needs to be turned around so we can find a cure.
Yeah, I mean, although, you know, your dad got this early, I mean, it does tend to be more with elderly folks, and as people are living longer, this disease is going to become more and more prevalent,
Yes.
I would suspect, and we need to give it more attention.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just going to continue to create the problems that it does,
Yes.
and we need to kind of try to stem the tide.
Yes.
We've got about a minute left. I'd kind of like to give you this last moment or two to ask or do to the audience anything you'd like. I mean, if you want to make a pitch for anything or offer some words of wisdom, thoughts, considerations, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I encourage anyone that has any questions or comments to contact the Alzheimer's Association. Know that whether you are a person that's diagnosed, whether you're a family caregiver, whether you're a professional, that you are not alone in this disease. There are resources in the community that can really help be a lifeline for you. So just know that you don't have to go through this journey alone. It is a tough journey, but there are supports out there. There are support groups. We have wonderful support group leaders that can really help a person stay engaged and involved.
Thank you, and good night.
Thank you.